Hello guys, yeah, welcome back. In this video, we are going to be making use of what we've learned from the last video, which is introduction to CSS, to take our page from this to this. So we are going to be making use of CSS to add stylings and proper layout to our landing page, and also style our images properly, and also our hairstyle sections. You can see that it's more better than what we previously have, including the pricing sections. So this is made possible using CSS, and we are going to get into coding in a short while. So before we move on, I wanted to point out that we have different approaches to designing websites. We have the desktop first design, which means we design the desktop design first, and then we now scale it down. Then we design for laptop, then we design for iPads, and then we design for phone. So which means like we come from large to small. So we design for the largest, and then the large, and the medium, and then the smallest. So that's basically what desktop first design means. And the other one that we have is the mobile first design, which is basically the opposite of desktop first design. So if desktop first design means coming from large to the smallest, then the mobile first design means coming from the smallest to the largest. So the mobile first design is all about like designing for the mobile first, and then going to the medium one, and then to the largest one. So this approach is basically based on preference or the requirement of the project, or which of the design you want to ship out first to your customers. So depending on the team you are working on, or the company you are working with, or the product you are working on, so that will determine the kind of approach that you want to go for. But for this tutorial, we are going to be going for the mobile first design, because a lot of people make use of mobile to visit websites, and there's no advantage or disadvantage for you to be worried about at this stage in choosing between the mobile first design or the desktop first design. So for this tutorial, we are going to be starting with the mobile first design. So let's get straight into coding. The first thing we need to do is to go to our Barbershop project, where we've written our HTML code previously, and then right click on it. If you're on Windows, you will see open with, and if you're on Mac, you can drag and drop your folder into your VS Code, or you open in VS Code using the quick actions like this. So once this is open, the next thing we want to do is to start our server. So you can click on the go live from here, and then your Barbershop should be open on the browser like this. So for this tutorial, we are going to be making use of the external CSS method, which means we are going to be having a separate file for our CSS. So we can go ahead and create a new index.css file like this. So this is where our CSS style rules are going to be kept, and then we are going to connect it into our index.html using the link tag like this. So we can change this to index.css, and we are good to go. So since we are making use of the mobile first approach of designing websites, what we need to do is to open our Barbershop in a mobile dev tool. So if you're on Chrome or you're on any other browser, you can make a research on how to put your browser on a dev tool. But on Chrome, you can click on inspect. On Mozilla as well, you should see an inspect. On major browser, you should see an inspect. So click on the inspect option, and then click on the 320px, which is the mobile small, to ensure that your browser is on 320 like this, so that we can have a visual of how our Barbershop is going to look like on the browser. So we are going to have it side by side like this, so that we can see the changes we are going to be making immediately. So we can also bring the final output over here, so that we can always check and see what stage we are in as we are coding along. So this is the current Barbershop project, and this is what we are going to be building. So this is how it's going to look at the end of this video, and this is how it's going to appear on a mobile phone as well. So for the Barbershop now, we've already opened this on the dev tool responsiveness. So this is what developer use to have an idea of how a website is going to look like on different devices. So we have a tablet like this, we also have a bigger tablet, we have a laptop, we have a big screen, and then we have the larger screen. So this is a 4K screen, which is the largest. But since we are going with the mobile first approach, we are going to start with 320px, which is the standard minimum screen. So can now shrink this down now, and then we can start coding. So I'm going to put this on 125 so that you guys can see it properly. So the first thing we want to do is to reset the browser preset styling. So the browser has some default styling that are being applied to each of the web page you are opening on the browser. So we are called these preset styles. So we are going to reset them. We are going to do reset browser preset stylings like this. So, and the way we reset this is to basically use what we know as the global or universal selector. So this universal selector basically select everything on the web page and then apply the style rules to them. So basically one of the things we need to remove is the margin. So the margin now we are going to set it to 0 like this. So if I hit save, you will notice like the spacing around here are going to be removed. So let me hit save now. So you can see now that all the spacing around the content have been removed. So these have been added by the browser, but we don't want it because it's going to be affecting our styles. So let's say for instance now I am giving the nav section a background of yellow like this, and I hit save. So, and let me remove this style. So you can see like the yellow background is not starting from the extreme edge of the browser, which is not what we want. We want the yellow to start from the beginning of the browser to the end of the browser and the top. So we don't want all of these extra spaces. That is the reason we are going to be setting this as margin 0. And one more thing that we need to do is to set the box sizing to border box. So we are going to be having a video with the more detailed explanation on box sizing. So it is a concept in CSS on how you want your content to be. So the next thing we need to do is to also reset or specify the width that we want for our assets. So for instance, now you can see like the image is not within the screen, is already overflowing. We also have this image that is overflowing, so and it is causing what we call horizontal scroll. So it is already overflowing from the screen. So everything should be within this place, within this edge, but now it is overflowing. And the same thing for the image as well, and the video as well. So you can see what we have for the video is also overflowing. And what we need to do to fix this is to basically use the width. So we can call the image tag and then the video tag and also the audio tag. So we can give them a width or max width of 100%. So once we set it to a width of 100%, they are going to take 100% of the screen and they are not going to exceed it. So is either we make use of the width or we make use of the max width. So the max width is telling them that don't take more than 100% of the screen. So you cannot go 100% of your parent container, and the parent container is the body and the body is also the screen. So that's basically what is happening here. So that's the first thing we need to fix. So when you are working on any project and the image or video or any media tag is actually overflowing, so you can try to set a max width for it and see if that works for you. So let me add a comment here so that it can help you to understand better while you are reading the code. So we are just going to say make image, video and audio tag to take 100% of the screen. So we are going to say to fix overflow or horizontal scroll. So that's basically the fix that we are fixing here. So if I comment this out now, this is the horizontal scroll that we are fixing, or overflow. So that's that. So this should be scroll. So moving on now, we are going to style our navigation section. To style our navigation section, we are going to access what we have in the HTML structure. So in HTML structure, we have a nav tag, and in the nav tag, we have 4 a tags. So which means the nav tag is the parent tag in the navigation section, and then the children are the a tag. So to style this now, we can go to our CSS file and call the nav tag like this. So we've already referenced the name of the tag that we have here, and then we can also reference the children later on using the nav a tag and open our curly bracket like this. So this is going to target the parent, and this is going to target the links within the nav tag. So for easy view, we can open this by the right like this, and then have our HTML by the center, so we can see the three things we are working on: the output, the HTML code, and the CSS code. So let's see what the final output is going to look like. For the final output, we have an orange background for the navigation bar, and then the links are white in color, and by default they don't have any underlines. And when we hover on them like this, we can see that they have an underline. So that is what we are basically trying to achieve. So let's go back to our output. So we can see now that by default this is blue color, and then they have underline. So we need to remove the underline and also change the color of the text. So firstly, let's give this a background color of orange. So this is the background color of orange, and then the links are white, so we can give this white like this, and then we can see that they are white. So to remove the underline style that we are seeing there, we can make use of the text decoration none to remove the underline, and as you can see, we don't have any underline anymore on the links. So that's basically how to remove underlines from text by setting the text decoration to none, as we've seen here. So the next thing we want to do is to create space around the text that we are seeing here, because in the final output you can see that we have enough space at the top, bottom, left, and right. So what we want to do here is to add a padding. So padding is used to create space within an element. So when we have an element and we want to create space within it so that the children of that particular element doesn't touch the edges of the element, we make use of padding. So as you can see here, the H here in the home link is actually touching the edge, and you can see there's no enough space at the top and bottom of this particular element. So that is what we are going to use padding to fix. So we can give this a 16px. So this is a unit, so we have the percentage unit, and also we have the px unit. So this is known as psi. So we have the percentage and we have the psi. So we are going to give this a 16px value, and from the output you can see that we have enough space at the top and bottom and by the left and right over here. So the next thing we need to do is bring the nav items to the center, because in the final output you can see that they have even or equal space between them. So the space here is equal to the space here is also equal to the space here. You can see that they have the spaces were distributed and everything seems to be at the center, but for here we have more space in the right than any other edges of the element. So what we can do here is to make use of the display property. So the display property is the same as what we've discussed in HTML video, where we have the block element and we also have the inline element. So the block and inline are a type of display property of an element, and we can change this in CSS using the display property. We also have more display properties more than the block and inline. We have the flex, we also have the grid, we have inline, we have inline block, we also have inline flex, we have inline table, we also have table. So, and there is a value known as flex. So this flex is a value in CSS which is used. So the flex value in CSS is used to determine the direction you want the child or children of an element to go, whether you want them to flow in an horizontal direction or in a vertical direction. So that's basically what flexbox is being used for, and in a later video we are going to be discussing more on flexbox. So with the flexbox applied now, we can now go ahead and make use of justify content So justify content is another property that goes along with the display flex. So the display flex, like I said, is used to determine the directions and placement of elements within the appearance. So we can use justify content to determine the positions or placement of the content. So what we want to do is to use space around. So the space around, just like what the name sounds like, is to create space around each of the content or the child of the element. So, and as you can see here, we have an equal space around each of the nav items. So the media has an equal space by the right and left, the pricing has the same, the hairstyle has the same, and the home also has the same thing. So that's basically what we've done with our display flex and justify content. So with that out of this now, the next thing we can do is to create a space at the bottom of the navigation section. So because you can see that the welcome to Barbershop is actually almost touching the bottom of the navigation section, this orange part. So we want to create a space at the bottom so that we can push the welcome to Barbershop further down the page so that it won't be closer to the navigation section. So what we can do is to make use of the margin bottom. So the margin bottom is basically doing the same thing but in a different way, like the padding. So it's going to be creating the spaces outside of the element instead of inside of the element, which is what padding is doing. So padding creates space within the element while margin creates space around the element. So padding is going to be creating space within the element so that the children is not going to be touching the edges of the element, while margin is going to be pushing away any other element that is near the particular element you're applying margin to. So for this now, we want to push the welcome to Barbershop element down or far away from the navigation element. So we can apply a 16px value here, and then you can see now that we have more space at the top of the welcome to Barbershop, which is the bottom of the navigation bar. So if I increase this to 116, you can see that we have more space. So you can play around with the value and then you can see the outcome. I can also have a negative value. If I have a negative value, that means like it's going to be overlapping the element that I'm applying the margin to. So but what we need is a 16px. So with the space being created now, the next thing we need to do is to implement the overstate of these links. So if I go back to the final output, you can see when I hover on the home or the hairstyles or the pricing or the media, you can see that we are seeing the underline anytime we hover on it. And to achieve this, we are going to be making use of the overstate of the link. So to do this, we are going to use nav, the a tag, and then we are going to specify the state. So this is going to be over. So the art of moving your mouse on each of these elements is known as over. So we are only specifying this state, that what should happen when a mouse is on this item. So that's basically what we are going to be doing here. So for here now, we are now going to do text decoration to be underlined. So if you remember, by default the links have an underline. So if you look at here as well, you can see this link that we've put here also have an underline. This index.css also has an underline because it is a link. So that's the default behavior of links. They are going to have underline to differentiate them from any other text, but we don't want that by default. We only want it to appear when we hover on it. So over here we remove the underline, we set it to none, and when the mouse is on top of it, we are going to show the underline. So that's basically the implementation there. So when I hover on the home, hairstyles, pricing, and media, you can now see that the underline is showing up now, and which is the same behavior that we have in our final output. So that's basically the implementation for the underline on over for the links in the navigation bar. So let's move on to the next section, which is the hero section. So for our hero section, let's expand it. We have a class of hero here, and then we have an h1 and also we have an image over here. Then we have another h2 and an image. So what I would like to do here is to divide this into two. So this h1 and image is going to be our major hero section, and we are going to have another section here which is going to be our sub hero section. So we have our main section and then we have our sub hero section. So it doesn't really change the output here, but it changes the way we structure our HTML. So this is going to be our hero, these two, while this is going to be a sub hero section or a separate section entirely. So the first thing we are going to do for our hero section is to create a space at the top of it as well. So we can come here and make reference to this hero section, and let's name this as hero section. So this hero section now we can now do dot hero, which is to make reference to a class identifier. So we are making use of class here. Over here we make use of the tag names, but over here we want to make use of the class identifier. So the first thing we want to do is to make use of the margin top, and you already know that margin is used to create space around an element. So we want to give a space at the top of the hero section, and we can assign this value to be 30px. So when I hit save, you can see that we have more space at the top of the hero section. So if I comment this out now, you can see now that we have a lesser space. But then if I comment this, you can see that we have more space at the top of the hero section. Now let's check the final article so that we can see what we want to design. So we have this at the center, and then the image that we have here also has a smaller width compared to what we currently have. So you can see this is much bigger, and then it's touching the edges of the browser or device. And this welcome to Barbershop is on a single line. In our final output is actually on 2 lines, and we have some space around the image like this in the right and left. So that's basically what we are going to be trying to achieve here. And there's also space between the text and the image. So these are the kind of things you should be taking note of when you are translating a UI or you are working on a design. You should avoid letting your images touch the edges of the browser unless it is a design that you want to keep. But for this, it shouldn't be that way. So let's jump to CSS to see how we can achieve this. So the first thing we want to do is to apply the flex property so that we can create a space between the welcome to Barbershop and the image. So what we need to do is to come here and do display flex. So display flex by default is going to make the content to be on an horizontal direction. So it's going to make them be on a row like this. So, and we can change the direction. You know, I mentioned the other time that flex is used to determine or specify the direction you want the content of an element to go. So with this now, we want them to go in colon, which is vertical. So we can do flex direction colon. So this is going to return into the default state, but this is the direction they were in. So why do we have to apply display flex and flex direction back to their default direction? One thing we want to achieve here is the gap. So with flex, we can also determine the gap between each of the elements. So we can come here now and do a gap of 30px. So now you can see now that we've created a gap between them, and we are now making use of margin this time around. So we can make use of margin to achieve this by applying margin bottom of 30px to this text. But another way to achieve this is making use of flex and gap. And another thing we want to achieve here is to bring this image and the text to the center. So we can make use of align items to come to the center. So you can see now that our text has come to the center using the align items. So this flexbox is very powerful in CSS, and you can use it to move things around the way you want. You can see how we were able to apply a gap of 30px, and also how we were able to bring the text to the center using the align item center. So that's basically what we will be using Flexbox for pretty much in this tutorial and going forward. So the next thing we need to do is to achieve the spacing beside the image here. So we don't want the image to be touching the edges. So we can achieve this using padding as well. If you remember, we use padding to create space within an element, and the parent element for this image and this text is the hero section tag. So, and that is what we are referencing as the hero. So this hero now is the parent container for this h1 and for this h1 and image. So what we basically need to do is to apply padding to it. So we can go ahead now to apply a padding of 12px to it. So the padding of 12px has created the spacing here and here, and also it has make it much to be matching what we have here in our final result. So that's basically it, and I think we're already achieving the spacing. So the remaining thing here is to make this be on 2 lines, and how we can achieve that is by increasing the font size. So in hero section we have an h1, and for that h1 we want to give it a font size of 40px. So now you can see that we have a font size of 40px, but then it is being moved to the left side. So to make this be at the center, we can make use of text align center. So this is basically how you can align your text. You can move it to the right if you want, or you move it to the center, or you want it to be at the left. So that's basically how you can move your text around on the browser. So but what we want here is for it to be at the center like this. So if you compare it to what we have here on our final result, you can see that this is on the 2 line, and to see this properly we can go back to our 320. So this 320 now you can see is the same thing as what we have here. Let me move this to 125 so that you guys can see it properly. So you can see there's no difference between the hero section. As I'm switching, you can see like they are pixel perfect. So that's basically it. So moving forward now, we are going to style our sub hero section. For the sub hero section, we are going to do something similar to what we did with the hero section. And firstly, we are going to give this a class of sub hero, and then we can go ahead and create our sub hero section comment, and then make reference to the sub hero. Then we can give it a margin top as well, so that it is not going to be closer to the hero section. So we are going to be giving the margin top of 60px, and then you can see the distance between them. So if I comment this out, you can see, and if I uncomment this, you can see the distance. So the next thing we want to do is let's assess the final output so that we can know what we are doing. So the sub-hero section has an orange background color, the text is black, and then within it there is also a blue text, and the image is also below it with a curve edges. So it have curve edges, so we're also going to be implementing that. Let's go back to our own work, and then let's see how it is. So I think the first thing we need to do here is to apply a background color of orange, and then you should already know that when you add a background color and then the contents are too close to the edges of the background color, you already know we can make use of padding for that. So the padding is going to create a space within that background color, the container, so that we can have more space there. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be having a padding of 60px up and down, and then we are going to be having 20px left and right. So this might looks a little bit strange and new. So basically what we are doing here is we are saying having a padding of top of 60px, a padding bottom of 60px, and having padding at the left of 20px, and having padding right of 20px. So this is the same thing as this, but this is known as shorthand. So instead of us having to specify each of these value like this, we make use of this shorthand. So this first value means up and down, and this second value means left and right. So if you have the same value for up and down, then you can use the syntax, and if you have the same value for left and right, you can use the syntax. And if you have different value but you still want to use shorthand, there's a way you can go about it as well. So but then we are going to be sticking with this syntax of shorthand. So you can read more about it, and in the coming videos you are going to be making use of this, so you are going to be seeing a lot of it as well. So this just means a padding up and down of 60px, and then a 20px padding by the left and right like this. So that's basically what we've done here. So moving on, we want to create a space between the text and the image, because in our final output we have a space here. And similarly to what we've done here using the flex, that's exactly what we are going to be making use of. So we can now come here and do a display of flex, and then we can give it a gap of 20px. So you already know that when we apply flex, it's going to move each of the item in the row direction or horizontal direction. So that is basically the default behavior of the flex, and what we need to do is to change the direction to colon or vertical. So you can see now that we are back to the default, but what we want to achieve with this is the gap. So if I comment out the gap now, you can see now that the image is very close to the text, and that is not what we want. And if I uncomment this now, you can see now that we have more space within the text and the image. So the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and style our text here, because what we have here is at the center, and this word or this sentence has a different color from others. So that's basically what we are going to be treating. So we can do sub hero and then specify the h2 tag within it, and then we can do text align or center. So this is at the center now, and then we can change the font size to 25px. So this is going to make it bigger. So font size is basically a property that is used to change the font size, and we can change this to 5px. You can see how it is. We can change this to 0px, and then we can change this to 100px or any value that you want. But what we want is 25px, so that it's going to be bigger. So to achieve this color, this separate unique color within this sentence, what we are going to do is we are going to wrap this sentence inside a new tag. So what we are going to do is we are going to look for the sentence there, crafting. So we are going to wrap it with a span. So this span tag now, and then the last word here is look, so we are going to wrap it like this. So we can have a span tag inside of an h1 or h2 or any heading tag, because span is an inner element and it is okay to have it this way. So we are going to have it like this, and you can see we don't have any difference in what we have here. So the next thing we need to just do is to make reference to this span in our CSS and give it the blue color that we have in our final output like this. So moving on now, we can come here and do sub hero h2 span, and then we can give it a color of doja blue. So you can see this is how to achieve having a different color within a sentence. So the remaining color have a black, and this span tag has a unique blue color. So that's basically it for achieving this blue within a sentence. So moving on now, we can see that our image here is square. It is a perfect square, but what we have in our end result is actually an image with a curved edge. So to achieve this curved edge now, what we need to do is to make reference to the image here. So we are going to say in sub hero there is an image which we want to style, and this image should have a border radius of 8px. So this border radius is actually making reference to the edges. So the edges of any element in HTML is known as border, because these are the border that is actually around the element. So we can now curve these edges using the border radius. So that is basically what border radius does, and how to make a curve element in HTML and CSS. So moving on now, we are going to proceed to the hairstyle section, where we are going to be styling this. So for the hairstyle section, we are still going to be doing something similar to what we've been doing. So let's have our hairstyle section. So comment first, hairstyles section, and then we can go ahead and inspect what we have in our hairstyle section. So the first thing we should note is that our hairstyle section is an ID, unlike the classes that we've been making use of. And based on what we've learned in the previous video, we've learned that we use dot for classes while we use hash for IDs. So what we are going to do now is to go to our CSS and have on hash, and then type styles like this. So the first thing we are going to style here is the margin. So similar to what we've been doing, we are going to have our margin, and then we are going to set the margin to 60 px here. And then next we want an auto by the left, and we have 0 px by the bottom, and then auto by the right. So this is quite different from what we've been doing previously. What this means is need a 60 px at the top. You can see that we have that space at the top here now, and we need an auto by the left and right, which means like we want an even space by the right and left, and we want 0 px by the bottom. So this is just to demonstrate the syntax of margin. So this is a shorthand for margin. So instead of us having to specify margin top separately, margin bottom separately, and other margin side separately, so we could just use this shorthand to specify what we want. So the next thing we can do here is to give it a padding. So for the padding, we are going to have 0 px. For up and down, we don't want any padding because we already have a margin. And then we need a padding of 20 px by the side like this. So as we've been demonstrating in this video, we've demonstrated that margin is used to create space around an element, while padding is used to create space within an element. So you should know when to use margin and when to use padding based on what you want to create. So the next thing we are going to do is to style the h2 within the hairstyle section. So we can go ahead and have our hash here with hairstyles, and then declare the h2, and we can now give it a text align of center, and then have a color of orange, and then we can give it a margin bottom 20 px. So what we just did here is to give space between the hairstyles and the UL tags, which is the unordered list. So we are giving it a margin bottom of 20 px, and we are giving it a color of orange with text align. So we can also make use of flexbox here to give a gap or space between the two. So it just depends on what you want to use, depend on your own use case or what you want to get done. So you can either use margin on the H2, or you use flexbox on the parent to give a gap between the two children. So that's basically it. So the next thing we can now do is go over to hairstyles list, so that we can style it according to what we have in our design. So this is what we have in our final design, and then we can come here to style it accordingly as well. So the first thing we want to do is come here and do hairstyles and give it a UL, and then give it a style. So the first thing we want to do is give it a display flex property. So this display flex property is going to make each of the children to be on the horizontal direction. So this horizontal direction is what we need, but then everything is not looking good at this point. So what we can do is to give it a flex wrap, and then give it wrap. So flex wrap is a CSS property that helps us to specify what should happen when the space of the children is not enough for them. So if the space cannot contain the children, so what should happen? Should they wrap? So wrap means like some children should go to the new line so that each of them is not going to be overlapping. So that's basically what flex wrap means. So let me demonstrate this to you by expanding this. So if I expand this now, you can see as we scale higher, each of the students are going back to the horizontal direction. They have been on the same line, but the moment we scale down, they are wrapping because the space cannot contain them. So we are telling them to go on a new line. So you can see like we can see some dot here. For you to see it properly, let's just add a gap of 20 px here. So you can see now that we can see clearly now that we have an item here and item here. So if you scale higher, you can see them on the same line. And then if you scale to 320, you can see them being on the vertical direction. So that's the usefulness of the flex wrap property. So that's basically it. And then let's compare what we have with the final output. So this is what we have, and then this is what we have here. So let me take this to 125. So if you check here, you can see that we have the same thing like this. So you can see that we actually have the same thing. So let's go ahead and style our pricing page because that's the only thing that is not matching with the design that we have here. So let's move on to style our pricing section. So let's see what we have in the pricing section. So in the pricing section, we have the H2 and then we have a new tag which is table, and we have the TL, the T row, the TH data. So this is basically the structure for working with table in HTML. So let's go ahead into CSS to style this. So the first thing we need to do is to write our comment pricing section, and then we can now reference our pricing using the ID format like this. And then we can now style the pricing section by giving it a margin top of 60 px so that we can have a space at the top so that it's not going to be touching this list. So when we hit save, you can see now that we have a space here like this. So we have a space here, and the next thing we need to do is to make use of display flex like this. So you should be familiar with me using display flex. You already know if I'm using display flex, is either I want to change the direction or I want to add a gap. So I want to make use of flex now. So you already know if I apply flex, all the item within this section is going to be on an horizontal direction or row direction by default. So and now I want to change the direction back to colon, and you should already know that if I'm changing the direction back to colon, you should already know that I actually want to make use of the gap between these two. So what I'm going to do now is I'll just make use of the gap now and say 20 px. And one thing you should note, aside from the space that is now between the pricing heading and the table, is that our table is now full. We now have a full table that is touching the edges of the screen. So without the flex, so let's comment out the flex. You can see that the table is just on the one side and is not full. But then if we apply flex, then it's telling it to take the full width of that particular section. So and with that now, what we need to do is to add a padding because you already know we don't want any of our elements or text or image or video to be touching the edges of the browser. So what we need to do here is to add a padding 0 px at the top and bottom, but then we want to add a 20 px spacing by the left and right. So if you check any other website as well, it will be very rare to see an element touching the edges, except that is the design for that particular website. So that's that. So this is coming up nicely now. We can see that we have it at the center now. So another thing that we can do now is to tie this pricing title to now be pricing H2, and then we can give it a text align of center and also give it the color of orange. So if we hit save now, you can see now that our pricing now is at the center and it has a color of orange. So that's pretty it. So the next thing we can now do is to style our table. So styling table is quite different from styling any other tags that we've been working with. So it's a little bit different, but then it is easier to work with. So what we firstly need to do based on the design that we want to achieve is to remove this extra border, because you can see like the border is two. We have one at the bottom and then we have one at the top here. So the same thing here, left and right, is just like they are too big or they have duplicates. So what we need to do is to collapse the border. So to collapse the border, we are going to do pricing, then table in pricing. Then what we can do is say border collapse, and then we say collapse. So this border collapse now is going to collapse the border of the table to just one. So this is what we have previously. This is what we have previously, and now this is what we have after collapsing the border. So that's basically it. And then we can now go ahead to start the HR and then the HD. So now we can now go ahead to start the HD and then the TD, which this stands for table head, and then this stands for the table data. So we can come here and do pricing, and then we can now specify that in table we have the table header and then we have the table data. So command means is like we have a table, and in the table we have table header and we have table data. So we don't want to specify this separately, like having to come here and say specify table data here and then table header here separately. So instead of having to repeat it this way, we can just say that there is a table header and table data in the table for the pricing. So what we cannot do is to assign a border. So we can do a border of 1px solid and give this a ddd. So what we did here is to change the color of the border. So previously it was black, but now it is now a gray. So if I change this to red now, you will see that this has changed to red. So that's basically the usefulness of border property, as we've also discussed earlier. So I'm going to change this back to DDD, and then the next thing we can add is to make each of the text to be at the center. So we want this text to be at the center so that they are going to rhyme with the heading. So we can do text align to be at the center, and if we go back now, we can see now that it is at the center. So the next thing we can do is we can give it a padding, because the text inside is actually touching the borders at the top and bottom. So we can just give it a padding of 8px like this, and then if we check, you can see like it looks much better. It looks much better like this. So the next thing we can do is to give the rows a 50-50 width, because this is a row, and then for each of the row we want them to take 50% of the width, because the type is actually larger than the pricing, so and it's not really looking good. So we can just come here and do a width of 50%. So they should share it 50-50, and no colon should be bigger than the other. So you can see now that we have a 50-50 space between table and pricing, and so that's a way to style a table. So the last thing we are going to do for the pricing table now is to give it a color. So we want to give some certain table row color. So, and to do this, we are going to use a little bit advanced CSS syntax, which is known as the nth child. So to write this now, we'll have pricing, then table, then we have table row, and then in the table row, we want to target an nth child. So the nth child now, we will now specify whether we want to specify an odd or even or a particular child following a certain pattern. But what we want to target here is the even child. So every child that are even, like 2, the second, the fourth, the eighth. So that is what we want to target. So that's basically what we are doing here. So now we can now go ahead and give it a background color of DDD. So what this is going to give us is this. So any even child of the TR is going to have the background color. And if we change this to odd, you can now see that we have the odd children. So it's going to start with 1, 3, and any number or any index that cannot be divided by 2 without having a remainder. So that's basically what is happening there. So now we are going to change this back to even, because that is what we want. So if you come here now, you can see we have the styling here. So if you check back and see what we have here, so and this one now, you can see like they're actually matching. So even though this one is by the left, we can also change this the text align to be at the left or right, but then it is at the center, which I feel is even much better. So that's basically it. But to match what we have here, we can just take this back to the left if you want to, and if you can keep it at the center, anyone that matches your design. I think I'm going to go with the one at the center, which is fine. So that's that. So now we are going to move on to the media section. So let's see what we have in the media section. The media section is also using an ID over here, and then we can start by writing our comments, media section, and then open the media ID like this. And then we can begin by giving it a background color of orange. So the background color of orange has been applied, and similar to what we have here, you already know that we need a padding so that we can create space around the content, and then we can have padding 60 px up and down, and we need 20 px left and right. So we are going to be using the same thing that we used here, so you can see. And the next thing is to give it a space. We want to create a space between the pricing and this section. So what we need to do is to make use of margin top, and then it's going to have 60 px. So we have a margin of 60 px now, as you can see. And then the next thing we want to do is we are going to make use of flexbox to give them space and to make everything be the center. So the first thing is display flex. Then you already know how it's going to be. Everything is going to be by the left, and then we can change the flex direction to be at the column. And then if we check here, you can see now everything is back to the vertical direction. So now we can see everything should be aligned at the center. And if you check back, you can see like we have the listen to nature, watch movie, everything is now at the center. So lastly, over here we can do a gap of 20 px, and if you come here now, everything now has a space. So it has a good space, and we can now move on to style the heading. So for this heading now, we have an h2. So what we will do is to declare the media and then specify h2 within it, and then we can do text align to be at the center, and then we can give it a color. Okay, so let's see what we have. So what we have here is actually a background of black and not orange, so we need to change this to black. The color that we have here is going to be an orange for the h2. So it's going to be an orange like this. And then for the content that we now have here, which is the h4 over here and this h4, so we can specify them as media h4, and then we can give them a color of white like that. So you can see now that we have a better look now. So this one is the orange, while this one is the black background. So that's good. So the next thing we want to do is, I think everything is set over here. Let's compare. So everything we have here now is same. So let's move this so that we can see them properly. So you can see now that everything we have here now is the same. So if we compare them now, you can see that we have the same design for this section. So, and that's pretty much what we need for this section. So now we are going to move on to the second to the last section, which is the about section. So let's see what we have for the about section. So in the about section, we don't have an identifier for it. So we can give this an ID or class and name it as about. So this is pretty much one of the simplest section we have. We only have an H2, and then we have a p tag with a bunch of content. So what we can do here is we can come here and do about section. So it's always good to add comments so that you'll be able to like know which section you are working with. So then we can now specify our about as an ID, and then we can give it a margin top of 60px, which is the same thing that we gave other sections, so that everything would be uniform. So everything have a margin top of 60px. So after that, we want to give it a padding of 0px at the top and bottom. Then we want to give it a 20px at left and right. So if you check now, so you can see that we have a space at the top, and then we have space by the side. So this is margin, and then this is padding. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make the content to be at the center. So we can do that by doing text align on the section itself. So if we do text align, we want center. If we hit save and scroll down, you can see now everything is at the center, which looks much better with the flow of the page. And the next thing we want to do is to create a gap between the about us heading and then the content itself. So what we can do is we can do a display flex and then do a gap of 20px, and we can do a flex direction of colon, because we already know if we don't do this colon, everything will be on the horizontal direction. So this is what we want, and this is the space we wanted to create, and which is really looking good. So let's see how it looks like over here. So it looks like this. This has an orange color, and this is much bigger, so we can come here, then reference this h2 and to do about h2, and then we can give it a color of orange like this. If you go back and check, we have an orange color, and then for this text we can increase it to 20px so that it can match what we have in our final. So we can have a font size of 20px. So if you scroll down now and compare what we have like this with what we have here, so you can see we pretty much have the same thing like this. You can see we have pretty much the same thing. So the only section that is not styled here is just the contact us section. So now we are going to proceed to style our contact us section. So moving on to the last section now, and that is the contact section. The first thing we need to do is to give this an identifier, and then we can give it an ID or class of contact like this. And the contact section contains an heading, an h3 subheading, and it has a form with label inputs and some other things. So the first thing we need to do is we need to actually remove these break tags, because we use it in HTML to create space like breaks between elements. So let's remove this, because we are going to be making use of CSS to create the spacing. So let's remove the breaks now. So after removing them, you can see how they look. So you can see that we needed them to create a break, and then if you want, you can keep them. If you want, you can remove them. So basically what we now need to do is to make reference to this contact from here. So we can do contact section, and then we make reference to it like this using the ID syntax, and we can give it a background color of orange like this, and we can go ahead and give it a margin top of 60px as we've been doing to other section as well. And based on what we've been doing, once you have something like this, then you have to give them padding so that they won't be touching the parent container. So say a padding of 60px at the top and bottom and 20px left and right, just like what we did in this section. So this is what we have here now. After that, we want to give them spacing, and we want everything to align properly. So we can do that with display flex. So display flex will make everything to be on the horizontal axis, and then we can change the flex direction to be colon, and you can see they are back. And the next thing we can do is to give them a gap of 20 px. You can see they are properly giving space now. So this is basically things we've been doing. We've made use of all these properties, so we are just using them to create spaces. We want spaces within each of the elements so that they can stand alone and everything will not be jam-packed. So that's basically what we are doing. So the next thing we can do is to align items to the center. Scroll down, you can see this has come to the center, and this has come to the center as well. And the next thing we can also do is to make use of justify content, which is also going to help us align everything both horizontally and vertically as well. So we can now proceed to style our heading. So for the heading, we can make use of contact H2. So our heading is H2, and then we can give it a color of white, and then we can give it a font size of 40 px. So if you scroll down now, you can see what we have here. So we have a bigger heading, and then the color is white. So we can now proceed to style our H3 as well. So this is our H3. So for this H3, we want everything to be text align center because it's actually aligned to the left. So we can have H3 here and do text align center. So if you check again, you can see that everything is by the center, which is actually very nice. So with this now, we can proceed to style our form itself. So for the form which we have here, we can say contact form like this because form is inside of the contact container, and the contact container is an ID. So we write it this way. And then we can now go ahead and do display flex, and then we can do flex direction to be colon, and then we can do a gap of 10 px for them. So this is going to give us this result. So if I remove the gap, you can see everything is just too tight, and if I remove colon, you see that everything is on the horizontal direction. So we want it to be on the colon, and then we want the gap to be 10 px like this. So that's basically what we are doing there, and we don't need the break tags as we did for the HTML. So that's the power of CSS. It helps us reduce some of the syntax that we'll be writing in HTML. So now we can go ahead and then style our labels. So for the label, we only want to style the font size. So we can have contact form label. So label is inside of form, and form is inside of contact. So this is label, it is inside of form, and form is inside of contact. Because later on, if we do this, then if we have any form in our project, then this styles rule is going to be affecting that as well. So we don't want that. So that's why we specify this contact and make the declaration like this. What we want to do here is just to give it a font size of 18px. So if you scroll down now, you can see like it's way bigger. And another thing we want to do is we want to remove all this border that is here, and we want to make our input box much bigger because currently it is not bigger. So what we need to do is to come here and do contact form input. We want to do the same thing for text area as well. So we have input and we have text area. So we also want to do contact form text area. So basically we are declaring two elements, and then we are saying we want them to have the same style. So if you want to give the same style to two or more elements, you can use this syntax by using comma, just like we did for the table yeah. So you can see we make use of comma here as well. So that's basically it. Now we can go ahead and add our padding. So for our padding here, we can say we have 10px and then 12px. So you see that the input box is now much bigger, and then what I'm writing is not actually touching the edges of the content. So that's the power of padding. So you can see that we've just been making use of padding, margin, and flex box to create spacing and then to specify the direction of the contents. So that's basically what we've been doing. And then we can remove the border that we have here. So we can do border orange so that it's going to be orange and flow with the background color. And we can set the edge border to have a border radius as well, so that it's going to be curved. So we can have a border radius of 4px. So with this border radius of 4px now, we can now proceed to style our button. So for the button, we can now do contact form and then button. So for the button now, we can now do the background color of black. You can see we don't see the text. So to see the text now, you can give the text a color of white, because white will show on top of black like this. And then we can remove the border. So border none is going to remove the border around here. So if I hit save now and scroll down, you can see what we have here. So the next thing is to give space within this button so that the submit text is not going to be touching the head and bottom of the button itself. So we can give this a padding 10 px up and down and 12 px left and right. So this is what we have now, which really looks good. So we can go ahead and change the font size of this to 18 px, and it's going to make it much bigger, which looks really good. And then we can change the border radius to be 4 px, so you can see what we have here now. And then you can see like the cursor that we have here is not showing us that this is clickable, so we can do cursor and name it as pointer. So if you give it pointer now, then you can see that it's giving us the pointer icon with the impression that we can actually click this button. So that's basically it. So if we take a look at what we have here, and then what we have here, you can see that everything, I'm switching them now, but then we are still having the same thing. So which means like what we did is actually the same thing. So if I come here now and switch, you can see like we basically have the same thing here as well. So if I come to the pricing like this, and come to the pricing here like this, you will see that's the same thing that we have, except for this that is being by the left, what is by the center. So you can choose anyone that you want. Maybe you want it by the left, or you want it by the right, or anywhere you want it to be. So that's basically it. So then for this session as well, you can see that's what we have. And then for the about section, we also have the same thing like this. So if we switch, you can see that we have the same thing. So and for the contact section, we have the same thing as well. So that's basically it for this video. We are able to make use of CSS styles rules to transform our barbershop that we've built with only HTML. We've used CSS to transform it into a colorful mobile page. And in the next video, we are going to be talking about responsiveness, in which we are going to be writing code for the remaining screen. So we only did for 320, so we will be doing for 375. We also have 640, so we'll do for 640. We will do for 768, which is tablet. We are going to do for laptop as well, and then do for large laptop. So you can see as we are expanding, you can see that our design is also expanding as well. So we need to design it in such a way that it's going to look good and better on this screen. So and if you scale down, you can see like it still looks good, very very good, because it looks better on mobile than on the bigger screen. So we are doing mobile first because we've already done for the mobile, and then if we expand, then we need to do for the remaining screens. So that's basically it. And there's an assignment attached to this video, so endeavor to check it out to test what you've learned in this video. And if you need help at any point, let me know in the comment section or in the community WhatsApp or Discord channel, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.